guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing something different. We're talking stitching on book pages, and I just thought it would be fun, and it adds so much to a book page. So come with me and let's get started. So we are going to stitch a simple pattern like a vine with some leaves on this book page. And I just want to show you how simple it is, even if you have no sewing skills whatsoever. Now first, what I'm going to do is draw out the pattern really fast. I'm just going to freehand it. And like I said, I just kind of want a vine with some leaves. So I'm going to do a curl, and then I'm going to add some leaves. Okay, you can do something super simple like that, or I don't know if you can see on the back side, what I did was I drew one, here you can't see it, let me kind of go over it with my pen, and I drew one that has multiple layers to it. And it really depends on what you want your pattern to be. Do you want it to be the center? Do you just want it to be... So here's one where the pattern is heavier and thicker, and you would follow all those lines. Now you don't have to draw out a pattern at all. That is totally up to you. But I'm going to show you on the single pattern. What I'm using is embroidery floss, and I'm using a regular needle, but the eye is kind of large on it, but not super large. I did have this needle, and it is so much thicker that it was leaving a really big hole in the paper, so I had to downsize my needle, and I just measure out, you know, about that much. It doesn't really matter if you have to get more floss, you just do. I'm using green because it's almost spring and it's almost Easter and St. Patrick's Day and all of that. And I'm using all the threads of the floss. Sometimes you pull them apart, but I'm going to use all the threads, and I'm not going to tie a knot at the end. I'll show you what I do. Now I come down to the end of my pattern where I want to start, and I just poke my needle through just like sewing. And I pull it almost all the way through where there's just a little bit on the back. And then I just keep going, and I do what's called a running stitch. And you can do this running stitch one of two ways. You can do it like this, where you just skip a little bit, and then you go poke up again and down, and you're just going up and down like that, and you just skip a little bit, and you'll be able to see what I mean by skip a little bit in just a second. And you just skip a little bit, and it's why they call it a running stitch. It's like you're taking a step and your foot's up and down, up and down. Now you need to make sure your book page, it can be vintage or aged paper, but you don't want it so old that it crumbles and falls apart while you're doing your stitching. So these pages need to be a little newer than some. Okay, so that's what I call a running stitch. You can see there's little gaps in the center, and it looks great. Or you can do where you have a stitch, okay, and you come up farther than a running stitch, and you poke your hole, and then you go back down in that first stitch right there, and you keep doing it that way, and you don't have any spaces, you have a solid line. So I came up through the same hole. You have to be careful though, because you're using double holes in paper, and it can rip, so you want to be very careful and don't pull too hard on your thread for sure. Whoops. And sometimes you might accidentally, you know, poke in the middle of the page or something. That's fine. And whether you do this all over the page, on the side, you know, is an adornment or is it the center, you know, center feature of the page, that is up to you. But if you go to the time to do this, you probably want it to at least be the star or a good supporting star. Because it does take time to do this, but this adds so much to mixed media. If you use a book page that has stitching on it, your mixed media is elevated to the next level. If you put this in a junk journal, especially if you're selling your journals, adding hand stitching to pages is, you know, like a big deal, more of your time. You definitely could ask more money for them if you ask me. Okay, so there's the other stitch where I go up and down the same hole. So you can see the difference there in them. You can do whichever one you like. I like using the same holes off and on. Like you make a new hole, you go down an old hole. You make a new hole, you go down an old hole. It's just easier to do for me, but of course you have to do whatever is easier for you and what's, you know, fastest. This stitch is fastest for me. And then when you get to leaves, you just keep going and then you come back to them, and I'll show you what I mean. Like I'm going to do the vine through the leaves and then I'll come back and do the leaves and then keep going on the vine. Can't find my... Okay, now I've gone through the leaves. Now I'm going to come back and do my leaves. And how much detail you want. If you want to do big leaves and do veining or whatever. This is very, very much a make it your own. But you just do the leaves the same way. You just stitch around whatever you traced out. And then you move on to the... Oops. See, now that happens if you poke through a hole too much. So you have to be careful. And if that happens, just go above it. You can put a little paper tape on it if you wanted to. Okay. And then just keep going. And you will end up with this. And look how pretty that is. It sets off the book page. And it was that simple. And the back looks like this. So what you can do if you don't want this on your journal, of course, you could take another book page and simply back it. So the not pretty part is inside. Up to you. But anyway, that's what your finished book page will look like. It's very cool. It has a lot of character. You can also do these simple stitches. And this is an index card. And all I did was outline the Peeps bunny, the Marshmallow Peep bunny. And then I decoupaged some napkin on. I put a bow and some washi tape. And I have a little Easter decor. So you can add it to layers if you wanted to. You can also add it to tags, and on this one is a flower, and I filled in the center part just to give it a little more depth and make it easy to tell what it is. And the back is just very tidy. You can still have plenty of room to write. But if you're doing this kind of detail in your journals or in ephemera that you're offering, you know, this is a lot more work, and this takes time, and I think it just would definitely command more if you sold your journals. I hope you enjoyed learning how to stitch on book pages, and this gave you some ideas where you could add stitching to more items in your junk journals, your art journals, your mixed media, whatever art you do. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure and give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.